Good afternoon. Distinct change in the air today. It's a lot colder than it was yesterday. It's overcast everywhere. I don't see any patches of blue at all today. But I found another great spot in the forest, as you always do in Sweden, it seems. And I've been up a long time working, writing, and editing. I'm working on some interesting stories. And I was reminded about today's poet, Cesar Vallejo, or actually that's why I picked him, is because I was thinking of two of the best storytellers, at least on my father's side of the family. And I was writing a long piece about, actually, I already did on one of them. And the other one, he loved, they were both very different storytellers. My great aunt was more like the wise sage on the edge of town in the dark room with a candle, and she might do tarot or something, but she would just like, it was just like she would take you way over the bend and just shift you into this other space, this like imaginal dream space. She's talking about things that happened 60 years ago, 80 years ago, 90 years ago. And she just weave these stories together, bring them back into the present, go back into the past. And it was like this continuous stream, this beautiful flow of ideas. This other storyteller in my family, he was more energetic, and he liked controversy. He liked showing contradictions. He liked challenging assumptions. He liked and he would like do a lot of interjections. And so that's why I was thinking of Cesar Vallejo. Cesar Vallejo was a Peruvian. He was from a small village in the Andes Mountains. And if you've never been to Peru, Machu Picchu, Lima, Cusco, or any other parts of Peru, every part is interesting. But just seeing the Andes for once in your life is so unbelievable. I mean, on the ground, hiking, walking, this stunning vistas. But also, if you have just like taking I was on a plane from Cusco to Lima, and you're just over these, and it just seems to never end. And just the forms and the beauty and the distance and the ruggedness, it's quite breathtaking. And I've been to most of the major, a lot of the major mountain ranges all over. I've never done the one they all do, the Himalayas, but it just doesn't interest me. Anyway, Cesar Vallejo grew up in Peru, wound up spending a lot of his adult life in France and Spain, and a little bit in Russia. He was political socialist, but he was also just a struggling poor artist in Paris and in other places. Knew a lot of the other famous. He knew Picasso. He knew, a lot of the painters and sculptors and other poets in that time in Europe. And he wrote stunning poetry. He didn't produce a lot. I think he died when he was 46, I think. Yeah. He was born like 1896, died 38. Interesting times that he went through, but many people, Robert Bly included. Robert Bly has translated his poetry and did an interesting book where he included Neruda, Lorca, and Vallejo and Machado. But a lot of people say Cesar Vallejo just had that pure poetic spirit, and he hit a lot of home runs, and his energy and his just lack of not lack of what do they say, like a lack of guile. He just kind of like laid it out on the table. He was that type, and so he liked exclamation points. And like sometimes it would seem like he had an extremely bleak and sad view of human life, but he didn't shy away from any feelings. And I think that he would say that it was all bundled up, because sometimes he would talk about reaching higher states of consciousness and the purity and the beauty and the and the grace of being on this earth, but he also said, the day I was born, God was sick, gravely sick. Anyway, I'm just going to go into this one, and he says, this is a great poem, I think. You don't have to agree with me. But Vallejo says, and what if after so many words, the word itself doesn't survive? And what if after so many wings of birds, the stopped bird doesn't survive? It would be better then, really, if it were all swallowed up, and let's end it. To have been born only to live off our own death. To raise ourselves from the heavens toward the earth, carried up by our own bad luck. Always watching for the moment to put out our darkness with our shadow. That's great, to put out our darkness with our shadow. It would be better, frankly, if it were swallowed up, and the hell with it. And what if after so much history we succumb, not to eternity, but to these simple things, like being at home or starting to brood? What if we discover later, all of a sudden, that we are living to judge by the height of the stars, off a comb and off stains on a handkerchief? It would be better, really, if it were all swallowed up right now. They'll say we have a lot of grief in one eye and a lot of grief in the other also. And when they look, a lot of grief in both. Well then, wonderful. Then, don't say a word. Or it would be, what? Entonces. Claro, entonces. Ni palabra. So that's really quite a poem of energy, and most of his poems have that real existential bite to them, or existential bite to them. They're not shy poems. They're a part of our soul that it's like something that's been on low heat, but it just needs to break out. It just needs, it's something that's in the air, and it has to be captured and caught and spoken at the right time. And that's what I was trying to think about my one relative who loved to put in contradictions and counterpoints and challenge assumptions. It was like he would do that too. As I got older, I would see and I would think that, oh, he's doing this deliberately, like he's been thinking about this. He was thinking about this last night, like how he's going to introduce this topic, and he wants to wait until like a quiet moment, and there's been this building of this story, and then all of a sudden he was like, well, I bet you didn't know this. And but he was masterful. I've very few storytellers, and I think it's like all of our culture, it's vanishing, and yet it's so embedded in us. Like that is what separates us from so much of life, so much of life is that we are storytellers. It's imprinted deep within us, and we love to tell stories, and we're losing that. We're losing the spaces. We're losing the third places. We're losing connection with that, and it's all about these devices and stuff like that. And that, and along my hike, like I've stopped in like cafes or libraries or other places or town squares and things or churches, and I found that people are just so excited when somebody just wants to engage them in conversation. And then, I feel like I've been in a different frame of mind where people are like, even people who would normally be a little bit timid are coming up to me, and they want to talk to me. They want to tell me their stories, and then we laugh and share, and that's like the most beautiful thing about being human. Although it's kind of funny, I found this spot in the clearing. I'm loving this weather. My fingers are a little bit, like, some people would put on gloves, but I don't think it's quite that serious yet. But anyway, I've been working, and then I got to a point in this one story where I was trying to resolve something and try and figure out where I wanted to go with it, or if I needed to leave this section out. And so I came up, I found this spot, and I laid out on this bench I found, and didn't really take a nap. I didn't fall asleep, but I was deeply relaxed. And then all of a sudden, there's nobody going by. There's all these trails in all these different directions. And I'm kind of like in the middle of all these trails, but I don't really see people. And then all of a sudden, this guy calls out to me, of course in Swedish, but he's asking, "Is everything all right? Are you okay?" So he saw me just like lying on my back still. I don't know if he thought he came upon a corpse or something. But then he had this, and then all of a sudden this dog came up to me. It was just the cutest little puppy, or it's kind of like in that transition point. It's starting to get big, but it looked like some kind of husky or similar to a husky. And the dog was very curious about me too, and had this delightful face. And so the guy and I kind of laughed, and I was off deep into my thoughts, and I was relaxed, and I didn't know if I was going to fall asleep. So I would have liked to gotten up and chatted a bit and petted the dog maybe, but anyway, but it was so nice. Like, he veered off the path. I mean, that's a story. Like, I think he thought he might have stumbled onto a story. There's this guy lying absolutely still on a bench. And but yeah, so it turned out well. But then I got up and started walking around and formulating what I wanted to do for this. And I think, since we have a little bit of time, well, I don't think anyone's listening at this point, but I wanted to actually, I'm going to do a short video on that instead of like adding it onto this. I think I'll let you go, and just look up, if you haven't encountered him before. You've probably seen some quotes from him. He also wrote prose, but he's known for 2 exceptional books of poetry. And the one I read, of course, is "And What If After So Many Words," where he's kind of talking about, words can only take us so far. Language, we want to believe that language, we can express all that needs to be expressed in this world. And he's saying, no, it fails us sometimes. It misses things. We miscommunicate, and we end up in situations where we can't pull up the right words, or like in Greek cultures, like it's like a hook. You're trying to, it's like a fisherman trying to pull up this word, and it never comes. It never arrives. And he's talking about that, but he's also talking about some darker things too. But we'll just leave it there. But then he'll have another poem where it's like the exact opposite, where he's really feeling the flow and the energy and the power again. He gets his power back. But I think it's because he's willing to go there. He's willing to go into the cave. You dare to enter, but that's where the treasures are. But he's also describing that process of bumbling around, fiddling around, touching things in the dark, trying to find your way, and not knowing you're going to find it, but then you do, because you knew deep inside with you that it was always there, but you doubted it and you were scared. But you had to do it. You had to do it if you wanted that alignment and cohesion, and to catch your power back. So those are some themes that I've been thinking about recently, and I will cut it there. Have a good day. Thank you.